Well, hello my friends, it's Shawn Petite and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Look at this happiness on the page. Here are the supplies that we'll be using today in today's project. So I'm starting on a 12 by 12 MDF board and I'm not putting any papers down in the background. Weird, I know. I am just going to gesso this, get it ready and primed so that it's going to be ready for all the layers. I am going for a watercolor look today with my acrylics, and so I wanted it to look like a watercolor piece, so I went with a very light, simple background, which was really hard for me because I want all the grungy and all the good. So I'm doing a little bit of brayering here to give it some color and some interest and not so flat. So I used the gesso, I'm using a gray, a beige, and a titanium white. Those are all Lucas acrylic paints, just with my brayer to just get a little bit of color and a little bit of interest, some activity in the background, to kind of give it just something besides just plain white. It just isn't in me to have a plain white background. So hard for me. So this worked great. I still struggled with a white, super white, light background with nothing going on, but it was, we've got to step out of our comfort zone to learn new things. So I'm using some golden, these are heavy body acrylics. And the reason I went with these instead of, say, my fluid acrylics is because I know the colors, and that's what I wanted. So quinacridone magenta, Indian yellow, and violet. And I'll have all of the colors and supplies listed down below in the YouTube description box. But I'm doing a lot of mixing with those colors to just get some variation. And so I'm laying down my initial pattern with my stencil, which is perfect for this because it's got that dark color in the background. And then I can get all my paints watery and juicy and good and give it that watercolor effect. So I've got 3 different stencils here, all Flower Gang stencils, and again, those will be listed. But I'm using Indian yellow, magenta, and deep violet color, and just kind of mixing all of them together in different ways, and mixing them even as I'm stenciling. But then I'll mix them some more as I begin to put down that watercolor effect. So I've got just a regular brush that's kind of a smaller pointed, almost a smaller watercolor brush, and I'm just watering down my paint colors like crazy. And I'll lay my first initial colors in, and this was the first one, so I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing, and so I'll lay in my darker colors, and then I just add water to my brush and just kind of expand those colors out. And anytime that I want to lighten my color or give it more of some movement, I just add water to my brush. And I'll just continue as I get each area kind of laid in with color. Then what I do is I come back in and I just drop another color into the mixture of all that watery, painty, yummy goodness. So I'm using deep violet and magenta and then the yellow, all in each flower, but I drop in more color into the watery areas. So if I want it to be lighter, I will drop in a little bit more yellow and a little bit more water. If I want it to be darker, I'll drop in some of that violet and not quite so watered down. So I do the same process all throughout the flowers, adding more color of one than the other. But you can see I'm painting outside of the lines and letting that paint that's watered down just kind of flow into its own little spaces. And the more water, the better, because the first one felt really controlled. And then once I got comfortable with what I was doing, I got more free. And that's kind of how it is with any thing that you're trying. It's always kind of an unknown at first, and then you kind of get your feel for it, and then you have a little bit more freedom. So I'm just continuing to add water to my paint colors, and going from there. So I'm just painting outside of the lines. And what that does with the stencil is it gives you that dark base color, and then you can expand your color, watery color, outside of that stenciled area to really make it look, give it a watercolor effect. And I love it, love it. It's so much fun. I love the look, and I'll be doing quite a few more of this technique. So I'm going to fill in all of my flowers. And I'm doing the flowers first because I want to work wet on wet, so that I get that blending and I get the mixing. And so instead of stenciling out everything first, I stenciled my flowers and then came back in and worked on those with wet on wet paint, so that I get all of that wonderful, yummy mixing. So now I'm going to start my leaves, and I'm doing the same exact process all the way through. With the leaves, I've got only a few colors as well. So I've got olive green in the Lucas paint. I've got the eucalyptus color that I'm loving from Americana. And then I'm dropping in some Indian yellow again and some raw umber. That's it. And so I didn't use a ton of paint colors, but the mixing is what's important. So you got to know what colors look good when you mix them together, especially when you're using this technique. So I've got all of my leaves down, and now I'm coming back in and I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm starting with olive green, and then I'll mix in some Indian yellow and some of that eucalyptus. Oh, and I did add some teal. Of course, gotta have some teal. It just makes everything better. And again, nice and juicy, and just kind of coming back in and dropping those colors in wherever I feel I might need some. I did add a tiny bit of beige to the leaves to get some highlights and some lowlights. And you'll notice too, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to hold my brush far back on the brush handle. And the reason I do that is because you have less control, and it gives you a freer brush stroke. Things aren't quite so precise. When I want to get super detailed, my hand will go down the brush closer to the brush itself, so that I have more control. But when I hold it towards the end of the brush, you have less control, and that gives you a more painterly feel. So you can see I'm adding some, this is not raw umber but burnt umber, and it's because it's warmer. It's got a warmer feel to it, and the colors are fairly warm, and so I wanted that to be warm as well. And because I've got such a stark background, there has to be some warmth in there. And like I said, all the supplies, the stencils, and everything that I used will be listed down below in the YouTube description box. Or the link to the blog will be down below in the YouTube description box. And the stencils and the collage pack that I used today will be on sale this week. And I'm trying to stay, one of the important things with this technique is finish a section, because you want your paints to be wet as you're adding color to them, so that they all blend and get messy and do that thing. So I'm not touching the top ones yet. I'm staying within the bottom half just to get all of those nice and painty and juicy and wet and all the stuff that, all the mixing. And then I'll move up to the top. So I've got, I didn't need to show you the entire leaves section. So you see what I've done. It's the same thing all the way around. So I've printed out my quote, and I'm just putting that down with Liquitex Fluid Matte Medium. I printed my quote out on tissue paper. And I put that down. Now I'm just going to freehand just a few tiny little flowers, and it's just really basically a big blob of paint is how it works out. But I'm using the same colors, and I define the flowers and give it the centers and more of the petal definition, that kind of thing, with my charcoal pencil towards the end of the video. But you can see I'm putting some darker color towards the center and making sure to leave some lighter areas, but just really kind of giving a flower appearance without it really being that. And just wanted a tiny bit more color. So now that my flowers are dry, I'm coming back in and adding just a few more touches of color. So if there's an area that I really wanted it to be darker, or I wanted it to be messier around the edges, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just, now that it's dry, because before you have to stop at a certain point because you just have so much color and it's all wet and all that kind of stuff. Once it's dry, now I can come back in and do the same wet color, but have it really stand out in the darker colors. And again, I'm doing that with the leaves as well. So there are some leaves and different things that I wanted to add some darker color or some lighter color or more definition or something. And so I'm coming back in with my greens that are wet and yummy like they were when we first did it, and just adding some darker colors now that everything's dry. Adding a few more leaves, a few more details. And what I'm doing here is I've got my dryer, and so I'm really adding some color, and I want the color to stay exactly where it is. It's watery and wet, and I want that look, but I want it to stay right where it's at. So I hit it with the heat tool real quick, and it kind of sets the outer edge of the paint so that it doesn't bleed into anything else. And you can see I'm pushing that paint with my heat tool there to help me keep that color in a certain area. So now, of course, I needed some paper on here, so I got some of the mini butterfly collage pack butterflies, put those down. One of the bright pink butterfly at the top is in the resource library for free. Now I've got my Arteza acrylic markers, and I'm adding just a touch of color to the bolder words, just for some interest. Adding some leaves to my little flowers that I painted. So the story behind this piece is a good one. I hope you stick around for the conversation at the end. I talk about how it is so good to stay tight in our bud when we need to, but that there's always a time to blossom. And so it's a good conversation. I hope you stick around for that. So I've got my charcoal pencil out here, and I knew I wanted some definition around everything, but I didn't want to shade everything like I typically do because it takes away from that watercolor effect. And so I'm doing some scratchy lines all the way around. I do shade the butterflies. You can see how my hand goes down farther on the pencil because I have control and I'm shading and I'm being very definite about where I want my shading. And then when I start to add my scratchy lines around the leaves, I will bring my hand back down towards the end of the pencil and I twirl my pencil in my fingers as I'm tracing around each of the leaves and the flowers. And as I twirl, that makes my lines get curvy. And I wanted that messy kind of curvy lines around each of the flowers and the butterfly, or not the butterflies, but the leaves. And I hold my hand back against the pencil so I have less control. And just kind of outline everything, and that I can get my definition. I can add some dark spots in the middle of my flowers and all of that kind of goodness. And that's really it. I add my shading, my soft black pastel around the edge to give it some really good shading around the edge, to give it some of that darkness that I love, that kind of grunginess. But I just continue to go around all of the leaves and the flowers with my kind of scratchy tracing, and then I'll shade a little bit on the words here, then shade around the edge, and that's it, my friend. I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you did, subscribe and like and share and all those wonderful things. Don't hesitate to leave me a comment in the description box down below, in the comment box. If you have any questions, I do my best to get back to everything. And stick around for the conversation at the end. It's a good one. All right, my friends, have a wonderful day. Well, hello, loves, and happy Sunday. Is this not happy? This is just happiness right all in this space. I just had so much fun. I had an idea. I didn't know how it was going to go. I might do it a little differently the next time. Like, my background's really white, and for me that's so hard to do. But I wanted it to be more white because I was going for that watercolor effect. And as I looked at all different kinds of watercolor artists, and it's always on the white watercolor paper or something like that. So I did my own version of some background fun stuff. And so it was hard for me to do the white. So I might do this again on maybe a more warmer background, but in general, this was just so much fun. I love this look, love it. So much fun. And I just couldn't be happier. I just love it, it's happy. All right, so a couple things before I jump into the meaning. The collage pack that I used, this is the mini, that's not one, I didn't use that one. This is the mini butterfly book, and they come bigger than this. I just shrunk them down to fit for this project and on the page, but they come bigger than this. This is the mini butterflies collage pack that'll be on sale this week. And then this bright pink butterfly up here is free to you in the resource library if you want that. Stencils I used, I went through that throughout the video, but the spring leaves, all the leaf ones, and the flower gang, and I don't remember them all right this second, but I think there's 5 of them. They'll all be on sale this week if you want to get those. One other thing really quick, if you have ordered internationally, from us, and we've got a lot of them. If you have, and we've reached out to everybody, but I'm just making this kind of a blanket statement right now, or if you're going to order internationally, it's taking a very, very long time. We're at about a month. I mean, we get our orders out right away, and they're still in process, so it's taking about a month for them to get to where they're going, which is a very long time. So I just want to let you know that. What else? I think that is it. Okay. So I got this quote, and I just started writing about it because I really love the quote. And I was trying to apply it to our time right now, and me, and how I'm feeling, and all those kinds of things. And so I just started writing, and that's a lot of times what I do. So this is what I wrote to just kind of feel my way through this quote. There is a time to stay tight in your bud, to be cautious, to look inward, to slow down, to be quiet and listen. And that's where I think we all are kind of right now, because everything is, or we have been, I know a lot of places are starting to open back up, but everyone's kind of cautious, and we're unsure about how we're supposed to be doing things right now. And I think we've all been, for the last, I don't know, 2 months, 2.5 months, we've kind of been tight in our bud. And we've been cautious and looking inward, and it's forced us to kind of slow down, which is a blessing in a lot of ways. So let me read that again. There's a time to stay tight in your bud, to be cautious, to look inward, to slow down, to be quiet and listen. And when we're quiet, we can hear the truth. We can hear our heart's desire. I can't tell you how important it is for our own personal growth to be quiet, to put down our phone, to turn off the TV, to have a second, even if it's just for a few minutes, even if it's just in the shower, because I know a lot of you have smaller children and maybe you don't have that quiet time. I remember those days. We all need that quiet time to listen, to reach inside, to figure out what we are needing and what we're wanting, and where we want to go, and what we need to work on, what relationships need. I mean, all of that comes in that quiet time. So we can hear the desires of our hearts, but then that truth, once we get quiet and we hear it, and we hear the truth becomes so loud that we risk losing ourselves and our dreams and our relationships if we don't bloom. So I just want to encourage you today, during this time, or wherever you are. I mean, this is something that I do regularly, but being here at home more often, and being, not having the staff and all that kind of stuff, that quiet time, being alone, it forces you to really evaluate. And a lot of people we busy ourselves because we don't want to do that. And it is so important to be able to hear our own desires and our own dreams, and to hear within our souls what we need from our relationships, for our children, for our co-workers, for our community. All of that happens in that quiet, tight space, in that bud. But then that's not where it ends. We get to bloom, and we get to go for our desires and our dreams. We get to take action on how to make our relationships better, how to pick up the phone and say I'm sorry, or offer forgiveness, or all of those kinds of things. So I encourage you to use this time, and I'm hoping that, I know we're on our way out of it. I think several states have about a month left to go. Use this time to be quiet and bloom. To get so clear and to hear the truth so well. And it might not come right away, but that's why the consistent quiet and the journaling. I mean, I've talked about this before. I read a book however many years ago, 15, 20 years ago, called Write It Down, Make It Happen, and it changed my life. And it's that writing from our head to our hand that makes a difference. It's not typing, it's writing it out. When we can see it on paper, it changes our brain and everything. Write out that quiet time. Write out everything that you're feeling. It doesn't have to make sense. Nobody has to see it. Nobody has to read it except for you. This is you, about you, and what you want to do in your world. And it can be different for everybody. I mean, I'm not talking about conquering nations and being the president unless, I don't know, maybe that's what you want to do. But I'm talking about fixing the relationship that's broken, or reaching out to the person that you might be afraid to do, or picking up the paintbrush and painting the painting, or making the website for your business, or saying I'm sorry to your spouse or significant other. I don't know what it might be. But when we get quiet, when we're in that tight button, it serves a purpose. That serves a purpose. And we will ebb and flow. We'll cycle back into that quiet and tight place, and then we'll bloom again. And then we'll circle back. That's what I've done, at least. But don't be afraid to blossom, to break out, to bloom, to do the things that you need to do. For you, for your life. You get to write the story. All right, my loves. I hope you're surviving and doing well, and maybe for some of you things are getting back to normal, and yay for that. And I just want you to know that I think about you and I pray for you all the time, and I hope that you get quiet and then bloom. All right, my loves, have a wonderful Sunday, and always know that you are loved.